Is for today, everything's okay, everything's okay. Never comes again, another day like yesterday. Is for today, everything's okay, everything's
Good morning,
okay.
everybody. I know I have been threatening to sort out the situation where I would make a hand gesture like that and balloons would fly up and there would be a celebration or a thumbs up. And I was blaming it on Zoom. I kept saying, okay, I need to go in and figure it out. And I went in with Zoom and I couldn't figure it out and did internet search and found out that it's a function of Apple, something Apple does when the camera's on. I don't know how I got turned on. Just me being an old codger and a grouchy old guy. In my opinion, this is the worst of engineering. What digital and electronic devices are meant to contribute to us has been turned into a bunch of engineers going, oh, it would be cool if blah, blah, blah. And like 99% of it is like, no, it fucking is not. It's obnoxious. And then I have to go figure out how to turn it on. Like who is doing something where they're like, yeah, in the middle of the meeting, when I put my fingers up like this, I want to see balloons, whatever. Anyway, okay, that's me being grouchy. No, stop trying to anticipate our needs. Stop trying to anticipate our needs. All you do is invent a bunch of shit that we have to figure out how to turn off. That might just be me. I don't know. Anyway, I have one this morning that is in the infancy of the thoughts forming. So if it comes together in this podcast, great. I'll publish it. If it doesn't, you'll never find out because I'll delete the podcast. But I was looking at the notes that I made. Podcast. Why emotionally immature people believe that if you're capable of reflecting back their perspective and their experiences, and if you're able to go, oh, I could see like you're thinking on that and why you think that might be a good direction to go, that if you do that, they automatically assume you have agreed to their plan of action. You have agreed that their experience is objectively the correct experience. And conversely, why, for those people, if you attempt to be part of the conversation and go, okay, I get it, you reflect what they're thinking and what they're feeling and what they think should be done about the situation. When you reflect yours, they will instantly begin interrupting, disagreeing, arguing, because what gets viewed as really sabotaging and malicious behavior, in fact, from their perspective, is just the rules of the game. Because in their head, they have this program that says that empathy, understanding, and the ability to fairly accurately reflect and explain what someone else is going through to them is necessarily linked with agreeing with it, making it objectively correct and true, and using it as a way to set policy. Meaning, if I understand, so for emotionally immature people, if you reflect that you understand where they're coming from and you can do that pretty accurately, they're going to instantly assume that your ability to understand where they're coming from is permission for them to set policy. And if you are trying to get them to also understand your perspective and what you think is going on and what you're experiencing and what you think might be a good way for approaching something, they will argue and interrupt and sabotage and argue and interrupt and sabotage. And we find this very offensive. But in the end, they're doing it because they believe that if they understand what you're saying, if they allow you to create an understanding and an ability within them to see what it is that you're experiencing and feeling, they instantly feel trapped because they believe that that means that your experiences, your subjective experiences, are actually objective, and that your experiences now set policy, and they are now trapped in a situation where they have to set policy and they have to follow what your experience of it, and they have to allow your emotional experience to dictate how things go, right? And I'll give you some concrete examples because I'm being pretty abstract with this right now. And again, I'm just sort of cooking this. I was thinking through this, sort of hit me a couple days ago. About why it's not just that some people lack empathy and lack the ability to have a theory of someone else's mind, the ability to imagine what someone else might think and feel, blah, 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 but that some people seem compulsively resistant. They actively fight understanding other people. It's almost like you can take someone who seems pretty intelligent and somewhat adaptive, and they seem capable of understanding other people when that understanding results in serving their agenda. So we're talking about what's considered narcissism, right? When the understanding of other people actually serves their agenda, they'll be very understanding. And then you go, oh, well, they're an understanding person. And then we feel sort of shocked in other situations when they seem just incredibly obtuse, almost intentionally obtuse, intentionally refusing to understand how someone else feels, what someone else might think. But they'll even talk and they'll even suggest absurd interpretations of that other person that everyone knows is not true, and you know that that person knows is not true, and we'll be like, what the hell is wrong with this person? Like, what is wrong? Why would you act this way? Like, even though you disagree with them, I know you know, like you can tell what you're smarter than this. But all of this, in my opinion, comes down to that deeply held instinctive belief that for them, that understanding other people automatically means that you follow a policy set by that other person's experience, period. There's no understanding of what true collaboration is. And we'll talk about that, towards the end, of what it looks like for everyone to be having their subjective experience and everyone get a chance to stand up and take space with their subjective experience, but also to honor and respect other people's subjective experience, and then to collaborate and, to the best of our limited ability, find a way to move forward and set policy in a way that acknowledges as much as possible other people as well as our own needs. So I feel a little bit slow this morning. I'm going to try to think of some objective examples, and what usually works for me is to use an example that's fairly black and white. So let's use a black and white example. Let's take something that I think most people would agree is not confusing. None of us are like, this is okay. So let's take someone who hurts children in the worst of ways, in the most self-serving of ways. Maybe they use them sexually. They're sexually attracted to children, and this does an enormous amount of damage, et cetera, et cetera. There are maybe nowadays a few people who attempt to maybe normalize or whatever, I don't know, but most of us can agree that we have a real instinctive resistance and anger about this, and that we will do whatever we can to protect kids. But if you take a situation like that, there are people, many of them called therapists or psychologists or whatever, who seek to study any human condition and any mental state and whatever, and seek to understand it. And that can be really uncomfortable. But for folks just sort of walking around in the day-to-day, needing to deal with not being scientific about these things, just needing to deal with what reality is, most people will be like, I don't give a shit what that person thinks or feels. Like, I don't want to understand. Screw them. And we instantly go to punishment. So I think that's a good example where maybe all of us almost feel as if I can have a theory of mind for that person, and if I can sort of track what they might have experienced, what maybe they're born with, what chemically is going on for them, in a way that I go, oh, I understand how someone could end up in that position doing those things, hurting children. We almost feel like we're violating the children, and we almost feel like we're violating self, our own sense of ethics. And it almost feels like, oh, so what's the policy? In fact, you'll hear people say this, oh, fine, so we're just supposed to let it happen? No. In fact, understanding someone else's subjective experience, especially when it hurts other people, is crucial to us being able to effectively redirect that behavior or stop that behavior. If you think about, for example, detectives who become famous because they say are really, really good at, say it's an FBI profiler, someone who can like read a bunch of anecdotes and data on a serial killer, and that nobody's seen this person, they just see how they act and see the evidence they leave behind. And this profiler is like, well, this clearly is a woman. You can see from these things happening that this indicates a femininity in the situation, and this was likely someone who was badly sexually abused by her father and developed a rage against men. And then these things happen, and you can see that this is happening, that there's this emotional need, blah, blah, blah. So that FBI profiler literally may not empathize, right? And may, if they are a law enforcement officer who ends up running into that person is dangerous, they might even kill that person in the moment. But their ability to track that person down and stop them from doing what they're doing requires that they access a kind of psychopathy within themselves to be able to place themselves in the thought patterns of, so that's what a profiler does, right? And so when they're really, really good at it, people will sort of go, well, there's something about them that allows them, that gives them the ability to access some similar sense, right? So when there's a predator out there, and there's a detective who's really, really good at hunting down that predator, that detective has predatory instincts. To be able to think through and predict what that predator is doing, but also they themselves are engaging their own predatory instincts. They've just subjugated those instincts to something that's good for society and that is moral and ethical, that feels moral and ethical to them, that they're stopping predators, but they still have to use their own predatory instincts to do it, to be good at it. So let's get back to the original argument. You guys can hear that I'm kind of like circling and working through my own thinking, because again, this is something that's pretty unformed for me. But I was thinking through why emotionally immature people, it's not just that they lack empathy, it's that other people can get really frustrated and begin to realize they don't just lack empathy, they almost intentionally lack empathy. Their lack of empathy takes on a kind of wisdom that allows them to have an agenda in which they set policy, and they even persuade other people to set policy for how things move forward in a way that always serves them. And they're only empathetic with other people when being empathetic with those other people helps them set the agenda that ultimately serves them and would have been their agenda anyway. When someone else is having an experience and the agenda, and you incorporate that experience in a way that the agenda would be something that an emotionally immature person doesn't really serve them, or may even be kind of counter to them, they don't seem to have the ability to go, you know what, I'm just going to sit this one out. Even if it just makes my life harder, I just want that. I get what that person is experiencing, and it's not always about me. And I just want that person. In fact, it feels good to me to give that, to accommodate. I want to accommodate that other person, even though it costs me something, right? And so let me look at notes again, just to sort of refresh. This is why they will interrupt or intentionally be obtuse or sabotage you when you attempt to explain your perspective, because if you make sense, they believe they will be obligated to agree with and agree to your point of view and desired outcomes. And this is where it gets confusing for those people, because for them, there is no separation between their instinctive impulse and their actions. And what that means is their instinctive impulse automatically sets policy. If there's no separation between your instinctive impulses, if you're not the sort of person who goes, let's slow things down, let's see what I'm thinking, let's incorporate other people, is this the best for me, is it the best for everyone? Well, if you don't do that, if all you do is go from your instinctive emotional response to actions, and those actions end up setting policy for you and for other people, if they believe that there's no other way, then as soon as you start explaining your reactions and your emotions and your subjective experience, they are going to automatically assume that you are arguing for setting policy, setting action and policy according to your emotions. And so everything for them is this war between what they feel and what you feel, how they see it and how you see it. They don't know anything else. They can't see anything else. They were raised in an environment where there was nothing else. There was only a war between, I feel this, I react and take actions, and over time, that being a habitual behavior becomes a policy that creates an environment that's a little bit better for me. If you feel things and react without thought, and that is a habitual action, and that sets policy for how things go, and that doesn't agree with me, then I'm going to have to deal with this ongoing long-term habitual policy that is and feels antagonistic to me, right? That's what their perspective is. So to hear your point of view, like God forbid, even talking about possible behavior and outcomes, just to hear your point of view and to be able to reflect that back and go, oh, I get it. Like, you've had these experiences, maybe you've even had these experiences of me. I didn't intend it that way, but I get, like, you've had those experiences and that would put you in this place. If I can understand and reflect back your point of view from my instinctive reactive perspective, that automatically means we're going to have to take action on that, and that's going to be habitual action, because I don't manage myself over long-term patterns of behavior. I just react, and whatever the policy is that comes out of that, whatever. Why is it possible to accurately reflect someone's point of view and experience with empathy, but not agree to their desired actions or outcomes? Okay, so this is important. So I talked about how emotionally immature people have this wiring or have this program installed where there's only moment-to-moment reaction. I feel, I react, and my reactions, there's no separation between how I emotionally react and the actions I take. And since there is no separation, then the actions I take end up creating habitual policies for how things go. And mostly I want that to be in my service, right? So that's where that goes sideways. And that's where those people are going to intentionally sabotage, or maybe just instinctively sabotage and fight and sabotage and fight and sabotage and fight, because they exist in an environment where there's no separation between their emotional response and their behavioral response, and then the policies that get set in their environment that get set for them and everyone else. There's no separation. So the skill that they're lacking and the perspective that they're lacking is an understanding that my ability to empathize to have a theory of mind, and I'm going to make up some definitions here. When I say theory of mind, what I mean is maybe I have no feeling for you at all. But maybe even just intellectually, I can go, well, I've seen a lot of human beings do a lot of different things. Let's say I've seen a lot of stressed out and tired kids in school because I used to observe in classrooms, blah, blah, blah. And let's say I'm not a very nice person and I don't even really like kids, so I don't really have any feeling about it. But over time, I can see that stressed out kid and go, I know what's going to happen. They're going to act out. And as they act out, they're actually asking for help, but they're not going to get help because the teacher's overwhelmed and the teacher's going to be irritable with them. And so ultimately, either they're going to act worse and get into trouble, or they're going to shut down, and they're going to stay shut down for some time. They're going to learn that this is the only way people are nice to me, and they're going to stay shut down. And then maybe somewhere in their 30s or 40s, they're going to realize, wow, I'm really shut down. How did this happen to me? I have no access to my emotions. I don't take care of myself emotionally. And then I have these huge eruptions of rage or depressions or whatever, blah, blah. It's like, it's a theory of mind. I can have an intellectual understanding and a theory of how it works for other people without even empathizing. My argument of what empathy is to have that theory of mind, but for also to matter to me. I'm not in that position. I'm not that kid. I'm not in a position where I need a teacher or someone to put me in touch with my emotions. I'm an adult. That's my job. I learned to do that largely through therapy, but I learned to do that. And now I mostly take responsibility for staying in contact with my emotions and, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not that kid, but I feel for that child. I feel for that student, and I feel for that journey that they're having. So that's empathy, right? Sympathy is when you just feel what someone else feels. If someone blows up because let's say they're a Democrat and they hate Republicans, and they talk to a Republican who says things that annoy the Democrat, and the Democrat gets really, really angry, and there's another Democrat who gets angry at the same things, and they're like, yeah, like, I hate that. I hate how they talk, or vice versa. I don't give a crap about the political party. That's sympathy. That just means I feel what you're feeling. There could be some value in sympathy, but to be honest, there's not a lot. Because what it means is the only way I can care about someone else is I have to have the same emotion, the same emotional reactions, and I have to believe the same things, and I have to have the same emotional reactions. And if I don't, then we're in trouble. You see this in high school or in middle school, right? Where people will be the best, the besties, the best of the best of the best friends. They love each other, blah, blah. And it's because they hate the jocks. They both hate the jocks. So maybe I'm just playing with stereotypes. I don't know what the hell. But let's say they're both in band and they love music and they hate the jocks. The jocks think they're blah, blah. And so they're bonding over this and, whatever. They love each other. Oh, they practice together and like, oh my God, we're like the best friends and we think the same things. And then what will happen is one of them will get a crush on a jock and start dating the jock. And because they no longer feel the same things, there'll be this big fallout. And the other one will feel betrayed. Oh my God, I can't believe it. It's like we're not the same anymore. I don't even know who you are. And there'll be this big middle school or high school fight, and they'll have a falling out. And people will be like, what happened? They were the best of friends. Well, the problem is their friendship was based on having the same beliefs and the same emotional responses, which doesn't last ever for anybody, ever. Needing people to have the same emotional response and the same beliefs and the same ideas and choosing of the same behaviors is all the danger of tribalism, where people choose sides and go, we think the same things, we believe the same things, and we respond emotionally in the same way. And if you want to be in our club, you need to also be that way. And we're super deeply bonded and enmeshed. And this is why you see these really tight organizations will have tons of infighting and control, because their bonding is based on everyone has to think the same thing and have the same emotional reactions to the same things, and everybody has to hate the same thing. But this is extremely primitive. at the very least emotionally immature, and it doesn't work because humans are going to evolve, and they're going to evolve to have different thoughts and different beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. And if we're going to get along, we need to at least have a theory of mind of the other person and problem solve for society based on understanding what someone else subjectively experiences, even if I disagree with it. And even better, if we have empathy, if we care about it, if we care about the fact that that person has difficult experiences, right? So here's the separation again, where for some people, or what we should be shooting for, is the understanding that we can and should and need to be able to talk through people's subjective point of views, my subjective point of view and experiences, your subjective point of view and experiences, responses, without going, oh, well, that automatically means that we have to set policy only for you. That means I'm left out. No, we need to first understand, at least have a theory of mind, right? Take an example I've used many times. I'm an introvert. My hearing is incredibly sensitive. It was even more sensitive before I abused it for years as a musician. It was physically painful for me to go to concerts back in the 80s when it was like so loud. Like it was like stabbing spasms in my ears, the volume. And I had to just manage misery and discomfort and pretend, and I would go to the bathroom and get some toilet paper and wrap it up, and like I should have brought whatever. Ultimately I ended up getting earplugs, but then it doesn't sound that good, blah, blah, blah. Which means that when I go into loud environments or clubs, it's not always painful, but it's not fun for me. I don't enjoy it. My wife does enjoy it. She likes that stimulation and excitement and dance music and blah, blah, blah. Imagine if I was like, well, because I experience it this way, that's objectively true. And my reaction is the only true reaction to an objective reality that loud environments are bad. Therefore, no one gets to go to clubs, and I'm never going to task myself or push myself for the discomfort of being in an environment. Like, how selfish and narcissistic is that? But there's a lot of people walking around on the face of the planet who are like that. They've learned not to talk that way because people are like, oh, that's really selfish. But that's actually how they feel, and they push that agenda anyway. There are a lot of people on the face of the planet who are in that place where it's like, my first instinctive reaction is what's objectively true, and I don't want to hear, okay, I'll listen, yeah, because I'm supposed to, because that tells me that I'm an empathetic person. Like, they fake empathy, right? But the goal, the social goal, or the goal for you as an individual, because it's not even fun to live in that, because you're going to lose friendship after friendship when people evolve. No one's ever going to be aligned with everything you think and feel. So the goal then is for me to go, I'm this kind of person. Loud environments are not fun for me, but I'm going to take on the enjoyment of pushing myself and learning and training myself to have, not just to suffer through it, because that's not fun for the other person. Sooner or later they can tell, but to teach myself to enjoy at least some volume and some excitement and some energy, and to share that. And maybe I can't do it for 4 hours, but I could do it for 2.5 and genuinely enjoy with my wife being at a club with dance music and, yelling over the music and just telling jokes and blah, blah, blah. And then, right, so we get to have a policy that incorporates her as a human being and her subjective experiences. That's empathy, and empathy in action, empathy embodied, right? Let me go back to my notes. So what that means is the only chance society has to stop attacking one another and fighting with another and killing each other and demonizing one another the way the left and the right does in the United States is for us to first go, my ability to understand and empathize, or just understand, just have a theory of mind of where someone else comes from, does not mean we've automatically set policy that entirely eliminates who I am and my subjective experience. This isn't a competition to go, my subjective experience is objective and everybody has to go along with it. Yes, the narcissists think that. And so they tend to try to run things that way, and then other people compete with them, and it turns into more of that and more of that. Right? But the first thing we have to do is go, the only chance we have as a society to survive the rifts and the violence and the antagonism that we have towards one another is to first accept that exploring someone else's subjective experience does not obligate me to set policy based on their subjective experience. Understanding their subjective experience and how they got there and what that's like for them and what it's like to be them does not in any way, shape, or form obligate me to agree with them, to have the same thoughts, to have the same beliefs, or to set policy for myself, right? If I can come up with a theory of mind for child molesters, do not be confused. My ability to have a theory of mind for child molesters does not mean in any way, shape, or form that I would ever participate in allowing a child molester near children if I can help it. I'm a mandated reporter. I don't have to set policy because I understand. Understanding tends to help us set policy or to help divert destructive behaviors, right? So we all have subjective experiences. We have emotional responses, instinctive. You can't do anything about it. It's the human condition. It's you as a biological being. You have animal responses, instinctive responses. You get to take up space and talk to people and go, this is how I'm experiencing it. Just as understanding their subjective experience and being able to reflect it back to them so that they know they're heard and understood does not obligate you to set policy. You getting to stand up and go, this is my subjective experience and this is how this goes for me and this is what I would want as outcome, does not obligate anyone else to set policy based on your subjective experience. Once we all accept our subjective experiences as an individual thing that's distinct to me, distinct to my experiences, distinct to my personality, distinct to the nervous system I was born with, distinct to the thoughts and beliefs that I've had installed and ones that I've chosen to install, blah, blah, I am this unique individual. Once we accept that with humility, we need to spend 80% of our time insisting, taking up space and going, no, you will hear my experience. If you won't, I know that you're always going to set policy in a way that serves only you. If you can't hear my experience and reflect back to me, that I see that you really at least have a theory of mind, even if you don't care. If you can't do that, there's nowhere to go. Because either you're going to require that I align with you, sympathize with you, and have the same responses you have, which requires that I truncate all my emotional limbs and configure myself in a way that's comfortable for you, or I'm going to have to dominate you and force you, which turns you into a subhuman, which turns you into this truncated, limited, miserable person who's not really present in the fullness of who you are and what I could enjoy. There's no hope for that relationship. Either one person or the other has to sit there and be a servant to the other person's emotional responses. You must insist that you get to stand up and take space and share your emotional subjective experience. And you must also allow the other person to stand up and take space, and you must reflect back to them and go, oh, I look at all the patterns of the things you've experienced, and maybe even things that I've imposed on you, not intentionally, or, you know, whatever. And like, I get why you'd be in this place. I have a theory of mind, and maybe I even care. And I need you to do that for me too. And then we do that. But there's a separation between doing that and taking action, especially if that action is going to be habitual and set policy for all the humans in that situation. There must be a separation between our emotional instinctive responses. The first act must be to understand and at least have a theory of mind. Once you have that, the human race does so much better of a job at going, what if we did this? Would this maybe accommodate everybody to like 60, 65%? We're all getting enough that it's like, I'm an adult, I'm okay. You give me 65%. Oh man, thank you so much. I feel gratitude. I feel grateful because as a subjective living in human being, I understand that in a world of 8 billion people, the world is mostly not about me. Mostly not about me. Even amongst my own family members, because they're trying to get through life and their life is going to be mostly about them. But if we're going to survive this without hurting one another and damaging one another and being narcissistic and self-centered and getting into wars over emotional responses, you can have any emotional response that you want. Well, whatever. We don't choose that. You just have your first reaction. What you're responsible for is your second reaction. And choosing for your second reaction to go, I'm going to stop. I'm going to take up space and I'm going to invite this other person. Please make space for me to share my subjective experience of what's going on here. And then I also want to make space and I want you to share what's going on for you, especially if they seem diametrically opposed. Especially people avoid it when they're like, oh, there's no, yeah, but it's on us as human beings to take the most diametrically opposed with a long history of conflict. It's on us to go, the only thing that's going to solve this is to stop the reactions, the reactionary actions that then set policy that one or the other has to survive, or both people barely survive, or both groups barely survive. And we're going to have to go, we're going to at least have to start with a theory of mind. Can Israelis understand Palestinians' pain and anger? Can Palestinians understand Israelis, these embattled people, many of whom came directly out of Europe and the Holocaust and World War II? Don't set policy, don't set policy, don't set policy, don't take action. This again, you see people get into arguments on the internet. Like if you empathize with Palestine instantly, like you want to do bad things to Jews. No, shut the fuck up, you moral moron. No, you empathize with Jews. Oh, you're a colonizer. No, shut the fuck up, you moral moron. No. First, we can solve nothing if we can't look at individual groups and go, of course they feel that way. Of course they're having those reactions. Like, how would any other human? Of course, Palestinians feel the way they feel. If you went and studied the history and immersed yourself in it, you'd be like, fuck, how could they feel any other way? And if you study the history of Israel and the history of the Jewish people, like, how could they feel any other way? So then we have this situation where two people have been pushed so hard and so far for so long, two groups of people, that they're in nothing but reaction, and hurting each other. And I don't know what the solution is. We don't know what the solution is, but I guarantee you that first, it has to start with, at the very least, an understanding of history and an understanding of mind, where you don't have reactionary, emotionally immature people who go, well, if you start exploring the history of the Palestinian people and how and why they might feel violent towards Israel, you automatically hate Jews. Man, you got to step out of the debate. You got to step out. You get off the internet, go somewhere, and understand that you have nothing to offer in this situation. If someone is like, hey, let's talk about the history of the Israeli people as part of the overall larger scope of what the Jewish people have suffered for thousands and thousands of years, and you're instantly like, oh, you're a colonizer, and you hate the Palestinian people. Okay, you need to shut up and get off the internet, because you're contributing nothing. If we cannot have at least a theory of mind, which requires the time that it takes to work through human beings' histories and their subjective experiences and what their culture is and what their beliefs are and what they've experienced at the hands of the other and what those people have experienced at the hands of the other. And then people who are doing this are then accused of being mealy-mouthed and, whatever it is. Oh, you just want to take a side because you're a coward. Choose a side, coward. No, you're an idiot. Step out of the conversation. You're contributing nothing. You know who the brave people are? And it's not me. I'm using this as an example. You think I'm scared shitless, I don't want to get into the conversation? You know who the brave people are? The brave people, the people with true courage, are the people who can track, at least with theory of mind, both sides in those situations and go, there's something terrible happening for all humanity here. And they can talk about both sides, and they're going to get attacked by the haters from both sides. And they're going to be called cowards, and they're going to be put down, and they're going to be called meaningless. And they're going to say that they contribute, but those are the only people who have something to contribute. The rest of us are contributing nothing. If you're just having a reaction and then trying to set policy based on your emotional reaction, okay, we've had millennia of war, rape, starvation, and misery instituted. Look, there's natural disaster, but what humans have done to ourselves is far worse than anything nature has ever done to us. The miseries that humans have suffered through millennia of war, in which it was just normal to murder all of the boy children so they couldn't grow up to be soldiers, and to take the children and women into slavery and to rape them, that was just normal for millennia. The misery we inflict on ourselves is far worse than anything nature or a virus has ever done. The starvation that we've gone through because we've locked parts of the human race out, or because we make some capitalistic excuse or blah, 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 when we currently have more than enough food for everybody, enough wealth for everybody. The people who can solve this problem are the people who are courageous, who are capable of having a theory of mind at the very least, and also are capable of empathizing, in the case that I'm using, Palestine and Israel, with both sides, and having a deep understanding of both sides. The rest of us are just noise they have to fight through for us to have any hope. Any hope. So let's bring it back to the original scenario, right? Someone who's emotionally immature has grown up in an environment where whatever emotional reactions happened instantly translated to action. And those actions were done habitually, because people tend to have the same emotional reactions in general, over and over and over. Angry people stay angry, depressed people stay depressed, whatever. And so because those became habitual, those then set policy. Parents and adults and right? And that person grew up in that environment and they don't know anything else. And so whatever their emotional reaction is, they instantly act on it, and they do that habitually, and that sets policy, and they don't know any other way. So if you're asking for understanding, let's just slow things down, and let's just I want to understand where you are. I want to talk to what you experience. I want to understand how it feels for you, and then I want you to do the same for me. They are going to, it might be instinctive, but they're going to sabotage and argue and interrupt and bring it back to their experience and yeah, but blah, 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 yeah, but blah, yeah, but all I was doing was blah, and they're going to do over and over and over, and you're going to be like, oh my God, I just listened to you. You can't listen to me? They can, but instinctively, they don't know a world where people collaborate. They've never experienced that. They only know that, okay, now you're going to have you're describing your emotional reaction, and they assume that when you describe that, that is instantly going to be translated into actions, and that those actions are going to happen habitually, and that habit is going to become policy in which they must operate. So the only collaboration they can imagine is one in which what they want aligns with what you want, and then they're like, oh my God, we're doing it, we're together. No, you're accidentally together. A broken clock is right twice a day. People without empathy for one another and with no theory of mind are going to accidentally be aligned and feel like, oh my God, I really like this person. This is great. No, you don't like that person. You don't even know that person. All you noticed was that you happen to have the same emotional reaction and want the same things at the same time, and that felt good. But that is dangerous. That is dangerous to the human race, because that's tribalism at its most destructive. It's like, join the same tribe, join the tribe, have the same responses, same beliefs, think the same things, need the same things. And if you feel any differently or think any differently, suppress it, because the tribe's going to kill you off or reject you. And then we can just hate everybody else who doesn't align with us. Yeah, well, we've seen millennia of that. We've seen all of the war and the rape and the demonization of other human beings, other animals. The misery and the suffering we have inflicted on ourselves and on other life forms all comes from that. And the only hope is for us to start going. It might sound radical. It might sound like some Buddhist philosophy. I'm not a spiritual leader, but I promise you, psychologically, the way humans work, the only chance we have as a human race to not killing ourselves off, now that we have the capability of doing it, is to learn that I can take space and share my subjective experiences and expect other people to be able to reflect that back, to go, oh, I see that this happened and I even participated in it. And you had those experiences, and I totally get why you would have this response and think these things and believe these things. I totally get it. I probably would too. And why you would want this as a policy. Stop. We're not saying do anything. Just stop. I just understand. Now, other person's turn. You also take up space, share how you feel, what it is for you, what's going on for you, what the habits were, what that other person may have inflicted on you unintentionally. Once we both at least have a theory of mind, if not empathizing, caring, we are smart enough to come up with a policy. We're smart enough. We're creative enough. There's enough love. There's enough resources. There are enough resources that we can come up with a solution that keeps all of it, gives all of us 60% of what we need. And then we're adults. We'll take care of the other 40%. It'll give us enough to know that we're seen and heard. It'll give us enough to know that we can take up space. If we're really out of breath and we're really, really worn down to nothing, that we can take up space and have a significant portion of the human race go, let me just stop and listen. I don't want to bring it back to me. Well, this is why I was doing it. Yeah, but because, but I didn't mean to. No, stop. Just listen. And when you respond and go, oh, okay, so this happened and that happened and that happened, and I see that there's this long trend and you had to live through that trend, and you're saying that it made you feel this way and you had these behaviors, I get, like, that makes sense that if a human goes through that these are the outcomes. And I get that I was a big part of imposing some of that on you. I get it. We're not setting policy. We're not making, just, I can see it. Okay, stop. Are both sides heard and understood? Do we understand where we're starting? Do we understand really who the person is? We're not demonizing anybody. We're not idealizing anybody. We can't solve problems that way. You can't make up some bullshit image of someone and then set policy based on something that isn't real. You have to start with who people really are, what they're really experiencing, and what's really going on. And then we are creative enough, we are loving enough, we are complex enough, we are wise enough that we can come up with actions and behaviors that accommodate people enough that we no longer feel resentful and tired and angry and unseen and unheard, where we get to the point where we're just like, I don't give a fuck about anybody else. I don't care. I'm worn down to nothing. I got nothing. This is my wish. This is my wish. This is my wish. I cussed a lot. I'm pretty tired. I'm a little depressed. And so there was some anger and some frustration, and I cussed, and verbally I can be cruel and like, you fucking moron, blah, blah, blah. And I did that in this podcast. I apologize for doing that. It's not how I think of anyone who chooses to listen. It is that today I'm really, really worn down and really, really tired and a bit depressed. So I apologize for that, but in the interest of just being a human being, I'm going to upload the podcast anyway. All right. I love you guys. This is me being very, very human and a bit torn up this morning. I love you guys. I always love sharing with you. I will talk to you next time. Take care.
Just for today, everything's okay, everything's okay.